Okay, we're recording live.
Thanks so much for stopping by, everybody. Our guest today, quote, his book has helped me better understand something that has been puzzling me for a long time. Why have so many resource-rich countries in developing worlds remained steadfastly poor? The answer he gives is both complex and uncomfortable, and none of us in the first world can ignore the responsibility. Quote by Sting. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to Impact. This episode is sponsored by Hustle 2.0. But without further ado, thank you so much, Mr. John Perkins, for coming on the show. How are you doing today?
Great. My pleasure to be here with both of you, Devin and Nigel. It's wonderful to hang out with you again.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it is. This is fantastic, John. Really appreciate it. I kind of want to backtrack 2 steps here and find out a little bit more about this Sting. I have a quote by Sting. That's pretty cool. Really, well, there must be a backstory to some of that.
Yeah, so Sting, I was having dinner with him one night in Miami with him and his wife, Trudy Styler, and he said, all my life, I wonder about this, why are these countries with all these resources so poor?
Yeah.
He said, finally, your book explained that to me. But what I really found, and we talked a lot more and went into a lot of different things at different times, and I'd hung out with Trudy in the Amazon, and I get to hang out with a lot of really interesting people. So
yeah.
But then, at the end of the whole meal, we were upstairs in this sort of private room. And unbeknownst to me, he'd basically taken over the whole restaurant. The downstairs was loaded with his people, his staff members, and other people that he brings with him on these tours. Because he was the next night he was giving a concert at the Orange Bowl in Miami.
Oh my gosh.
They had a whole team of people. I didn't know that the whole restaurant had been taken over by them. And I think some of it's security reasons, but also just to treat it as a really nice restaurant, a very kind of secluded restaurant. At the end of the whole meal, he and I are in the men's room. And we're standing at the urinal. That's where all the important business.
Here we go. Yeah, it's always a story with
that. And Steve says to me, he says, it's the damnedest thing, John. He says, we who can afford it don't have to pay. He said, I had my whole staff here eating here, and the owner of the restaurant wouldn't let me pay. And he said that, as compensation, I gave his son and a whole bunch of tickets, very good tickets to the concert tomorrow night. Wow. But he said, I can afford to pay. But people that can't afford to pay, they don't get free lunches. It was a very telling moment for me. Yeah. And the other funny thing that happened was, so the next night he's at the Orange Bowl and he's giving me and my wife tickets, but I couldn't go because I'd committed to speak to the board of directors of the Fort Lauderdale Library, about 20 people. And so I'm up in Fort Lauderdale talking about economic hitman, and Sting's giving his concert out in the Orange Bowl to 55,000 people or so. Oh my God. But the next night I'm giving a talk at a bookstore in Coral Gables, just outside Miami. Yeah. And it's a big crowd. There's a room that's totally full, and then they've got a patio, and they've got a video. They're showing video people out there. So we had maybe 500 people there. I don't know how many people, but it was a lot. But for talk, and I taught, and Trudy earlier had told me, I'll be there, but Sting won't. He doesn't appear in these public things. And I think, well, that's a good thing. He shows up. Who's going to pay any attention to me? Anyway, I'm standing, waiting, and sort of at the side. People are filling up the seats, and Sting and Trudy come walking in.
Oh no!
and people are getting seated, and Sting's standing next to me, and he says to me, he looks over at me, and he says to me, John, there's a whole lot of people here tonight, and you don't seem in the least bit nervous. And I said, Sting, there's not anywhere close to the number of people that you were entertaining last night at the Orange Bowl. And he said, yeah, but I didn't have to talk to them.
Oh, that's good.
And then I said, well, would you like to talk to these tonight?
Oh,
and he said, No, but maybe Trudy would. So at the end of the talk, I introduced, everybody had already been speculating, is that really Sting? You know, and so at the end, I introduced Trudy, and she got up. She said, my husband and I are very happy to be here. And then she gave a big plug for the Amazon, which she.
Oh, nice.
So
He seems to be a really cool, like genuine guy that really cares about everything about the planet and whatnot. He's so diverse. I mean, with his talent, and I mean, I think it appears anyway. I've never met him, but just his persona, everything just really exudes that he's a really cool guy. Wow, that's fantastic.
He was totally serious about wondering why I wasn't nervous, because I was going to have to talk to these people. All he has to do is sing.
Yeah. That's right. He knows the words. He knows all the chords. He knows everything. Yeah. I just plug away on the bass and he's good, right? Oh man. So that's great. So we start our, I gotta step back again here for a second. We start our show with something called Two Truths and a Lie. Hey, Dev?
Yep.
And so I've got actually a bunch more truths and a few lies probably sprinkled in here. So I've got a bunch of points here, which I'm going to read, and Devin and I are going to guess which is or which are the lies. Okay. So you guys ready? All right. So here we go. John has been featured and quoted by the New York Times, Time Magazine, CNN, ABC, NBC, the History Channel, and Fox News. Okay. Number 2. His book has sold more than 1.5 million copies in 35 languages around the globe. Okay. Number 3, he met John F. Kennedy on the back of a pickup truck. Wow, man. Okay. I got another one here. Number 4, John has lectured at Oxford and Harvard and 50 other universities around the globe. He has also been awarded the Lennon Ono Grant for Peace and Rainforest Action Network Challenging Business as Usual Award. It's a big mouthful there. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. He also has kissed the Dalai Lama's shoe. All these things. And the last one here, this is great. My photo appeared on the front page of the Sunday LA Times fashion section.
Nice.
Gosh.
What in the world? Wow.
So what do you think, Dev? There's a lot of stuff here. A lot of really cool stuff.
There's a tough one.
This is like I say about John's book, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. If like 10% of the stuff in there is true, oh my gosh, this is the same thing here. This is wow.
That's a tough one. Like quoted by New York Times and CNN, all the yep, for sure. Sold more than 1 million copies. Yes. John F. Kennedy on the back of a truck. Yeah. Dalai Lama's shoe. Yeah. Oxford University. Yeah. I don't even know. Honestly, I'm pretty much lost on this one. It's all so believable. Oh, you know what? I think there might be a little play on
yeah, there's gonna be a play on something here. What do you think?
I'm thinking like more copies than 1 million copies. I think that's the lie.
More copies than 1.5 million copies. Yeah. I think that's the lie too. I think there's more than 1.5 million copies. So
is that what we're going with?
That's what we're both going with. Yeah. Okay. So drum roll, please.
We need to hear some backstory.
No, there are over 2 million copies at this point.
It's 2 million copies. There you go.
The other one, there is another lie in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
That is that I didn't actually kiss the Dalai Lama's shoe.
Oh,
so the story behind that, I came very close to it. The story behind that is that flying out of Leh Ladakh with a group of people that taken to Ladakh a number of years ago, 33 people were taken there, and the Dalai Lama was on the same flight as us, and he happened to, as we were sitting in the airport waiting to board the flight, and he comes in, he's carrying my book, Shapeshifting, under his arm.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And there's a story behind how he got the book. Somebody recently given it to him. But to make a long story short, he invites me to sit next to him in the very front seat of the 727 that we're flying on. And there's an Indian guide who is setting up all the logistics for the trip, who's with us. And he immediately goes around to our group and he starts collecting everybody's Cliff Bars and everything like that, because you're supposed to honor the Dalai Lama by handing him these things on a plate. And then he comes to me and he says, and when you go up to sit next to him, you need to kiss his shoe. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, you need to kiss his shoe. That's the custom. Well, I'm one of these people. When in Rome, I learned a long time ago, you obey customs. So the Dalai Lama, I'm going up to sit next to him. He's got an empty seat next to him. There's 2 seats up there in what would be the first class of a plane. And I get down, I go down to kiss his shoe. And he touches my head and he says, no, that's not necessary. Don't do that. So I didn't kiss his shoe. Darn close.
Oh my God. Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh, man.
So I'll explain the one about the LA Times fashion session.
Oh yeah.
That kind of goes. That's similar to this thing.
So that's true?
Yeah, that's true.
That's for fashion. Well
I was
done.
on the
Well
front
done.
page of the Sunday Times, LA Times fashion session, and the reason was because I'd received this Yoko Ono, Lennon Ono Peace Prize in Reykjavik, Iceland, and another recipient was Lady Gaga.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And Lady Gaga and I were on the stage sitting next to each other. And there's this picture of her, and she's got, one of the wild outfits that Lady Gaga wears.
Yeah.
And that was put on the front page of the LA Times, her garment. But I'm right there, sitting next to her. We're both there. We've got equal coverage. And I'm there in kind of my frumpy clothes, and she, so I made the front page of the LA Times fashion section, thanks to Lady Gaga, who also is an amazing human being. I think she is also incredibly authentic. I was deeply impressed.
Absolutely.
I spent about a week in Reykjavik with Yoko Ono. Yoko rented a whole bunch of hotel rooms, and we were all there together. It was really fun, and another very authentic person.
Yeah. I think just on the news the other day, it was their, I don't know what anniversary it would be, 40th or 40th anniversary of when they did the sleep in New York, her and John, right? They were replaying the interviews and everything. It was was it the 40th anniversary or 50? I don't know, like 1980 they did it, maybe something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, or 81. Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Wow, you've got quite there's a lot of stuff going, a lot of moving parts here. And I did throw in another one. I put in a little bit of a spoof on the one about all the different networks that you've been on and whatnot, and I threw in Fox News at the end there just to kind of mix it up a a bit, but maybe that's true. I don't know, but I just threw it in there.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I would certainly go on Fox News if they invited me, but I'd be prepared to be roasted. But I'm pretty good at being roasted. I can usually come back. Problem is that Fox News has the ability to basically shut you off, as they did to Van Jones one time when he was on there.
To Van Jones, yeah.
Stuff that they didn't really like, and immediately went to an ad.
Right.
So
Wow.
it's pretty hard to have a comeback when they've got control of the button.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh.
Well, and there's meeting John F. Kennedy on the back of a pickup truck. What was that all about?
Yeah, there's another one there.
It's just like,
what the heck?
Well, that's when I was in school in New Hampshire, and in a little town in New Hampshire, Tilton, New Hampshire. I was in high school, and John Kennedy was running for president. Wow. And he came through. He was doing a tour of New Hampshire from the back of a pickup truck. So the pickup truck stops in downtown Tilton, New Hampshire, and he makes a very short speech, and then he invites people, and I'm right at the very front. I was editor of the school newspaper, so I had privileges. So I'm right at the very front. So I climb up and I grab him. And he's willing to shake everybody's hand. He's doing this, So I wasn't alone, but I did get to shake his hand in the back of the pickup truck.
Oh my gosh! Whoa. Wow, that's incredible.
So
that was not exclusive, however.
Oh boy! Oh boy! Oh boy! Wow, that's just Whew. So I guess, do you want to get into some talking points, Deb?
Yeah, or we can just cut it there, and we can just crazy. Call it a day.
We had a list of questions and things, and now this is fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and that's the whole interview there.
That's it. Yeah, we're done. Yeah.
Oh, we'll get to some more serious talking points here.
I
Well,
guess,
anyways,
yeah, sure, we'll get.
let's
this is
just
great.
dive into it. A topic that is on a lot of our minds these days. I think massive companies like Amazon, Apple, and Google are kind of monopolizing the modern world. So John, what do you see as future implications to like this new modern world we live in now?
Oh yeah.
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What how do I see as the future? I'm hopeful that we will transform what I write about as being a death economy, an economic system. It's more than economic. It's a global social, governmental, economic system that basically is ravaging the earth. It's destroying the planet as we know it. It's destroying our futures.
Yeah.
So it's a death economy, and also to a large degree, it's based on war, or the threat of war. We all know the American economy is dependent on our military industrial complex to a large degree. So it really is a death economy. But I think people across the planet are waking up to that fact. Everywhere I go, I've been blessed to have the opportunity to travel and speak around the world, at least up until the pandemic, and have continued to do so virtually.
Yeah.
I see people waking up to the fact that we live on a very tiny space station, planet Earth, and there aren't any shuttles. We can't get off, and we're the pilots. We are at the controls, and we're piloting her toward disaster. So people are, I think, really beginning to understand that. At the same time, there's a pushback by what we might call the status quo or the power elites. There's always a pushback against any kind of revolutionary or new movement that threatens those who are in control. So that's happening too. And unfortunately, I think what you brought up, Devin, is that these big corporations, especially the ones involved in communications, just have so much power today. Yeah. And in my opinion, they're not using it responsibly. And I know that it's a double-edged sword in a way here, because what they say is they're looking for guidance, they're looking for rules and regulations, and we're at a time right now where the United States, at least, can't seem to make any rules or regulations about anything. There's so much discontent, there's so much division between Republicans and Democrats and right and left and so on. Yeah. But it's sad, it's discouraging that whatever your point of view is, it's augmented by social media. So if you're a left-wing person, you're going to get all this left-wing stuff coming your way that just supports what you already believed, or makes it even stronger for you. Yeah. And the same is true for the right wing. And actually, I think historically we've seen that the opposite would be a better way to go places, is for someone who's right wing to get a lot of left wing information, and someone who's left wing get a lot of right wing information. Yeah, and then we can make our decisions. And of course, the best thing would be to be balanced. And I really think, during a lot of my lifetime, the media tried to be responsible in providing balance. And if there were opinions expressed, then up until not too long ago, there was a law that if you had opinions expressed, you had to give equal time to opposite opinions. And that wasn't always adhered to, religiously, but it was there. And I think there was an attempt to be somewhat objective. And a great example is when Walter Cronkite went off to Vietnam during the Vietnam War.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
And came back and said, they're lying to us. Our government's lying to us. Our military's lying to us. We're not winning this war. He couched it in little more political terms than what I'm saying. He was somewhat careful, but he said it. Yeah. And he was able to say it. And he was the most trusted man in America at the time. I think I got that right. Some polls showed him.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
CBS.
I remember Walter Cronkite when I was a little kid. I mean, the moon landing, everything. It was just, him taking off his glasses and had that tear in his eyes as, the whole one small step for man. It was just,
Yeah.
We all trusted him. Everybody. He was the man, right? He was, it was,
Yeah. He was CBS, and there were really only two other channels that covered news like that, ABC and NBC. You had PBS, but you had a few other, but they were the main ones. And so immediately the other two networks also had to kind of pick up on this and take what Walter Cronkite had said seriously and start investigating it themselves. And we were able to do it. And then they were showing all these bodies of American soldiers coming back in caskets, getting off the planes. And that was very powerful. And now it's illegal to show that. The media is not even allowed to show that. Plus the fact that we've got this extremism in social media of supporting your existing belief system,
Right.
which I think is anti-democratic. Frankly, it's in a democracy, people should be presented with with both sides equally, or and nothing's ever perfect, but this is so far from perfect, and it seems as though it's done with intent, because it enables Facebook, it enables all the other social networking outlets to build up they think it helps them build up their readership, and apparently it does.
Right.
Yeah. No, I know it's sad, and it just seems to be getting worse. It's it's polarizing all of us against each other. It's tearing families apart. It's a very interesting and kind of a difficult time with the way social media is kind of spinning here. Yeah.
It's interesting. I recently saw a video replay of the show that Bill Maher did.
Bill Maher, yeah.
And it was called Silly People. It's only about 6 minutes. You can look at it on YouTube.
Yeah.
He said that the Americans are silly people. We're so divided. And the quote came from Lawrence of Arabia, saying to a whole group of Arab tribes, basically, he said, you're never going to defeat the British as long as you remain a silly people and stay so divided. And so he was saying, that's kind of where we are. He said, but he said, and I like this, there's got to be something between an autocratic system that gets a lot done like China and a democratic system or representative system like ours that can't seem to get anything done. There must be something in between. And I think that is where what we need to be looking at right now is how do we move into a space where we're not like China, where we're not autocratic, but where the people are able to speak as Cronkite was able to speak. And yet we're also able to have Republicans and Democrats and liberals and conservatives that reach compromises that benefit the people, that aren't just about getting reelected.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And you I just wanted, like, your books are fabulous. I've read both editions of your Confessions of an Economic Hitman, the first one and then the revised one. And like I said before, with your Two Truths and a Lie, if 10% of the stuff in your book was true, I was like, we're in trouble.
100% is true.
And I know. And I was like, oh, I just sat there and I thought, God, if 10% of the stuff in this is true, this is just like, this is ridiculous. And so just a little bit of a step back, and I don't know if you want to talk about that. So tell people about what exactly is an economic hitman?
Yeah, and I want to preface this by saying there's a third edition coming out in about a year or so that really deals with China moving into this field and China's economic hitman. Anyway, I think it's fair to say that we economic hitmen have really taken a lot of responsibility for creating this death economy. And it's one of the reasons I'm so determined to turn it around, because I do feel deeply responsible for having played a role in that. The way I worked, my real title was Chief Economist at a major consulting firm. I had up to 50 people working for me. And my job was to identify countries with resources our corporations want, like oil, and then to arrange huge loans from the World Bank or one of its sister organizations to that country, with the stipulation that these loans go right back to a U.S. corporation to build big infrastructure projects in the country, a Halliburton, a Bechtel, a General Electric, some major contractors to build infrastructure like power plants, highways, ports, industrial parks. And these things benefited, first of all, they made huge profits for our corporations. Secondly, they benefited a few wealthy families in the country, but families that own the industry, that own the banks, that own the commercial establishments. But the majority of the people suffered because money was diverted from education, healthcare, and other social services to pay off the interest on the loans. And in the end, the country couldn't pay off the loans. So we'd go back under the guise usually of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and say, hey, since you can't pay your loans, sell your resource, your oil, whatever the resource happened to be, real cheap to our corporations without social or environmental regulations. Or vote with us on the next United Nations vote against Cuba or whatever. Let us build a military base on your soil. And so basically, it was a form of extreme colonialism done primarily through economics rather than through military might, which is the old form of imperialism. But I will say that all of these leaders, it was a fairly easy job for me because all of these leaders understood that if they signed off on these debts that basically enslaved their countries, they and their friends, their cronies could benefit from it. They would make money out of the process. And it wasn't just using the infrastructure, but also we arranged for their kids to get full scholarships to colleges in the United States. We bribed them legally, like the scholarship thing, which is a bribe, but it's totally legal. In fact, we brag about giving money to the countries. And at the same time, they also knew we had these people we called jackals in the background. And these are usually CIA operatives, not necessarily CIA employees, but they're contractors who've come out of CIA or special forces or whatever, and they overthrow governments or assassinate their leaders. And, the United States has admitted to doing this with Allende in Chile and Mossadegh in Iran, Lumumba in the Congo, and Diem in Vietnam. And the list goes on and on, Arbenz in Guatemala, and in more recent times, two of my clients, which the US has not yet admitted to because the statute of limitations isn't up, or whatever it's called. But President Roldos of Ecuador and Omar Torrijos of Panama.
The Panama, I read that.
My clients of mine and wouldn't play the game and died as a result.
Didn't their planes go down within like a couple of weeks of each other or some crazy thing like that?
Yeah, in 1981, Roldos May and Torrijos in June. So the job of economic hitman is to basically colonize countries, the resources of countries, and that may be labor. It's not always just mineral resources. There's lots of different kinds of resources we might want from a country, and use it to our benefit. And it's really a game as old as empire, and yet it's taken on incredibly new significance in this globalized world that we have. And now, as I mentioned, the Chinese are excelling at it. They've learned from our mistakes and our successes, and they've got a new story to present to the world, which is a very appealing story to Africa and Latin America. And they basically bought Africa and Latin America at this point. They're the biggest investors and the biggest traders in those two continents, bigger than the United States or Europe.
Yeah. I know when you travel through Africa and there's massive warehouses and factories and things that are popping up all over, and like, where'd that come from? And it's all Chinese investment, and then also throughout, Latin America, South America, and so many of these countries and these, the loans, which are basically, just giving the money away, where, North America, we just can't compete, on projects and tenders in certain countries. We can't compete against, what they're offering, right?
Well, and it's also the fact that they have this great story. For 3 decades, they had double-digit economic growth. No other countries ever experienced that. They had an economic miracle. They rose out of the devastation of Mao's Cultural Revolution to become the second most powerful economy in the world, and by some measures, the most powerful. And they brought 800 million people out of poverty. That's more than the rest of the world combined. And so if you happen to be the leader of a Latin American country or an African country or many other countries, And you look at that model, and then you compare with the United States model, where we have not had an increase in real wages since 1973. That's when you adjust for inflation. The average worker in this country has not made more money since 1973. We've gone from 60% of the population being middle class to 50%. And meanwhile, the billionaire class has radically increased. So the rich have gotten much richer, and everybody else is either pretty much remained the same or lost money.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are looking at how to develop your economy, and you're an African nation or a Latin American nation, you say, well, wait a minute, which one of these models can I sell to my people?
Yeah.
Which one works? And the other thing is that many of those countries are sick and tired of having US military presence in their countries, which we have done, and feeling exploited by us. They've gotten the message. They understand. And I asked them, I'll talk to leaders in these countries. I know several of them personally, and I say, well, don't you think the Chinese are going to do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And they say, well, maybe, but they haven't. And you have. You've proven that you're willing. You economic hitmen have proven that you're willing to exploit us in very serious ways. And we don't know about the Chinese, but we do, but they haven't done it yet. And we do know that they have really created an economic miracle in their own country. Wow. Oh, and there's one other thing.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No.
So our story was here, accept this loan, hire our companies to build big infrastructure projects, and you'll have a great bilateral relationship with the United States.
Yes.
The China's economic hitmen go in, they say, hey, take this loan, hire Chinese companies to build the infrastructure project, same basic thing.
Yeah.
And you'll be connected with a new global Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative. So you Ecuadorians, it's not just about having a relationship with China, it's about opening your trade with Peru and Colombia, and also Nigeria and Thailand. You'll be part of a huge world trade network that we Chinese are building to your benefit. And that's the story. And is it true? Will it pan out? Who knows? But that's certainly it's a very attractive story to leaders of other countries. Very different from the story that we sold.
Wow. Yeah, and it was interesting what you just said about minimum wage and whatnot. Last night there was a Nobel Prize was awarded to, I think it was a Canadian that for that a study on exactly that he and some other people worked with a couple of different cities, and they upped the minimum wage in one and they kept the other one, and then over time the prosperity in that town was massive compared to the one that never did raise the minimum wage. So he actually won the Nobel Prize for that yesterday. It just came out.
Yeah,
it's really fascinating.
Well, and our system of measurement is so skewed. So the fact of the matter is, if you invest huge amounts of money in infrastructure in a poor country, the economy does grow. Yes. So for many years, when I got started in the business as a chief economist, I thought I was doing a good thing. I believe that, and many people still do that are in that business.
Sure.
They're not all, think they're doing bad. They don't think they're doing bad stuff. But few at the top that probably know what they're doing. But most of the people, so the statistics show, econometric models and so forth, invest this money, the GDP grows, gross domestic product grows. It does. And I thought this was a measure of prosperity. Right. But then I came to see that this is not a measure of prosperity. This is a measure of how the rich are doing.
Right.
So if you take the United States as an example, we have 3 individuals here in the United States who have as many assets as half the rest of the country of the United States.
Yeah.
If those 3 individuals last year increased their assets by 10%, and that other half lost 3%, and everybody else stayed the same, we'd show an economic growth of almost 4%. So it would look as though the whole prosperity of the United States had grown. But in fact, the opposite happened. Most people suffered. And 3 individuals became very wealthy, even wealthier.
Yeah.
And if that's true in a country where 3 individuals have as much wealth as half the population, what about countries where 3 individuals have as much wealth as 90% of the country?
Yeah.
And that's often the case in some of these lower income countries.
Yeah.
So the statistics we're using, GDP and GNP, gross domestic product, gross national product, these are very, very skewed to make things look good for the rich.
Mm-hmm. I've always struggled too, because I belong to various different entrepreneurial conclaves out in MIT and Boston and all over. And the number one thing that we would always say, and I'm sure you've heard this too, is if you're not growing, you're dying, right? So you need to be growing like exponentially. Your business needs to be growing exponentially. You need to be scaling up, and I've always really struggled with that. I've always struggled with, well, okay, if we're all growing exponentially and we're building our businesses, there's not going to be much left on the planet for future generations if we're like a cancer. So growing okay, and but sustainably growing, sustainably contributing, sustainably helping your communities or whatever it is, but this exponential growth, it just can't be. It's not possible. And so I've personally really struggled with that every time I go to one of these conclaves, and that's all. That's what we talk about.
Well, yeah, Nigel, and I think the response is we do need to grow a life economy, which is the opposite of the death economy. So if the death economy is ravaging the very resources upon which it depends in the long term, and creating horrible pollution and income inequality, then the life economy does the opposite. Mm-hmm. And it pays people well to clean up pollution.
Right.
It pays people to regenerate destroyed environments, ravaged environments. It pays people to do more recycling, to create new technologies that don't ravage the earth. And I think we've been on that path. The B corporations, the benefit corporations, conscious capitalism, the Green New Deal. There are these movements. We're becoming aware of that. So we do need growth. If you're starving millions of people on this planet, billions of people are starving or malnourished. We need the growth that'll take care of those situations. We need the kind of growth that'll stop the destruction of the Amazon rainforest and so many other environments. There's a growth that needs to occur, but it needs to be shifted into the life economy. The death economy is driven by a goal of maximizing short-term materialistic benefits, maximizing short-term profits for corporations, maximizing short-term accumulation for the rest of us. And the life economy is driven by a goal of maximizing long-term benefits for people and nature. And we have been moving in that direction. But again, there's a very strong pushback against that by those who benefit from the old system. So I think, the response of these conferences is, I'm all for growth, but let's have growth in the direction of, paying people to mine all the plastic that's floating around in the oceans. Let's pay people to come up with many new techniques, like, solar and wind. That's a great start. We've made great progress there, but we're still in the pioneering phases of alternative energy. We still haven't come up with good ways to store those types of energy. Let's do that. Let's pay people to be creative in creating an economic system that's based on maximizing long-term benefits for us and our children and our grandchildren. And I think, Nigel and Devin, and I think, Devin, especially in your generation, you're stuck with this. We guys created a horrible situation that you're having to take over. And we can look at it as your victims, but we can also look at it as you've been given a great opportunity to excel in doing something that human beings haven't done for a while, but it's part of human nature, because for the 250,000 or so years that we've been human beings, throughout almost all of that time, we lived in a life economy. Our ancestors, like indigenous people today, like the people you guys have visited in Guatemala and Ecuador and elsewhere around the world, have always worked toward making life better for their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that always included benefiting the natural world, taking care of, being good stewards.
Right.
That's right.
Well, so you're pretty much just answering my next question right there. You just like bled right into it. But like, why are indigenous teachings, so important to us? We're trying to make a better future, but we're using the past. And also, what is the Pachamama Alliance for those who don't know?
And I just want to throw in too that so John, so you had a major shift, right? So I mean, you're economic hitman, all this stuff, and then you had some shift that threw you towards kind of indigenous thought, like Devin was just saying, indigenous cultures. Like you ended up, I think, either in Guatemala and then Ecuador, and then spent a lot of time. So you had some kind of a big shift which took you down that path, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. And the shift actually started before I was an economic hitman. I was in the Peace Corps right out of business school, living in the Amazon. And I won't go into all the details, but yeah, I had a moment of deep enlightenment then. But then I went back and did what I've been taught to do in business school, which was to practice the economics that we're taught, that we've been talking about. But I think, and getting back, so wait, what was the question, Devin?
Sorry, I kind of screwed up, Devin. I just wanted to put a bit of a backstory on, because you were an economic hitman, and then you had a bit of a shift out of that. You left it and then became connected to the indigenous ways of life. And then Devin's question, sorry, say your question again.
It was just, why are indigenous teachings so important for us nowadays?
Okay, so I became an economic hitman, chief economist, and I bought into that whole system for quite a few years. I was only in that job for 10 years, but for a little over half of it, I really believed in the system. But because I think I'd lived with the Shuar and lived deep in the Amazon, lived with indigenous people before that as a Peace Corps volunteer, I began to see things that others didn't see. And because I spoke Spanish fluently, I got to hang out with people like Omar Torrijos of Panama, who pointed out to me, he said, the system you have is not what you think it is. It's not what you're taught it is. You're not helping the people. He really pointed out to me the problem with GDP and GNP. So I was getting all of this information coming in. At the same time, I remembered one classic example is the Shuar. So I'm living with the Shuar, who were hunters and gatherers in the late 60s in the Amazon. And the men were trying to teach me to hunt birds with a blowgun. I never wanted to kill a bird anyway, but I remember one time I've got this huge blowgun. You've seen them; they're about 8 feet long, monster things, And I've got this blowgun, and I'm aiming at this bird, and the guy says to me, "Don't shoot that bird." And I'm like, "Oh, good." Why? And he says, "That bird's in nesting season." And even though our kids may be hungry back home right now, wanting bird in their stew, if we kill that bird now, it won't have babies, and the world would be worse off. Our kids and grandchildren would be worse off. And I'm like, oh my God, that's fascinating. How do you know that? And he said, well, that's what we learn as kids. That's our education. Right. And that's one example of so many things, like don't let your populations grow too big, because hunters and gatherers need restricted populations. And there's so many aspects of indigenous life that is totally oriented toward the long term. We talk in the United States about the seventh generation. I don't know any indigenous people that actually look 7 generations ahead, but they all look at least 3 or 4 ahead. Maybe that implies 7. But whatever it is, it's this idea that we are the stewards. We have a special place. We're not better than the monkeys or the frogs or the trees. And in fact, many of them believe in past and future lives, and they don't just believe you're going to be people. You're going to be monkeys and frogs and trees, because that's every one of those life forms teaches us something. But as human beings, we have this power to take care of the earth or destroy it. And the responsibility in all their legends, all their customs throughout, I think, the 250,000 years or so that we've all been here as humans, we've had this belief system in taking care of future generations. And the realization is it's not just future generations of humans, it's future generations of everything. we lost that. Maybe we began to lose it a couple of thousand years ago. It's hard to say exactly when that happened, but what we do know is it's really accelerated in my lifetime, and it's particularly accelerated in Devon's lifetime, and in the last 10 or 15 years, which it gets worse and worse and worse. But at the same time, we are waking up. There is a consciousness revolution. So I think, in answer to your question, the indigenous people teach us we need to have a life economy. That's what that's what human beings have always had until recently.
Yeah. And then you're also one of the founders yourself, Lynn and Bill Twist of the Pachamama Alliance, right? Which work with indigenous tribes in the Amazon to help, well, what you work with them to help preserve their kind of way of life and preserve their wisdom that they have, because it's disappearing pretty darn quickly. Right?
Yeah. And that's another interesting example that when we started the organization, it was really oriented toward, the typical kind of American idea. Well, let's go in and teach these people how to save their forests.
Yeah.
Very quickly realized that they could teach us. It wasn't that they were not destroying the forests. It was our oil companies and our lumber companies and our cattle companies and our roads and our, all of it.
Yeah.
And they taught us that. And then they taught us, but don't, you can't just save the rainforest by coming here and trying to keep the oil companies out. You've got to change the mentality that supports oil companies. Why are the oil companies here? Because if you take them out of here, they'll go to some other environment and destroy it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to change the dream of your people around the world. So so today about half the organization is devoted to continuing to work to help save the Amazon, but the other half of the organization is devoted to changing the dream of the modern world, essentially transforming a death economy to a life economy. And I think we're in over 80 countries at this point. With programs.
Yeah. And there's a global community gathering online. I think it's is it November is it 4th or 5th or something? I can't remember. With the Pachamama Alliance. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go to Pachamama, PACHAMAMA.org and join up. It's the 4th, Thursday, 4th of November.
4th of November, that's right. And they've got some great, Van Jones, I think, is on again this year. And I know Jane Goodall was on last year. So it's really
going to be on again. And Paul Hawken, I believe.
Paul Hawken, yeah.
I'm not sure exactly who's agreed to be on again, but yeah, it's great people. And,
and yourself?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe.
All I know is that I'm so grateful to yourself and to Lynn Twist and Bill Twist and and Daniel Cooperman, of course, for the invitation back in we went in 2010 and deep into the Amazon rainforest, and we were with the Ashwar, and our whole family went. Devon, you're, I don't know, 14 or something, or you're 15, and we had an amazing experience, and I personally had a life-changing experience there. Then when I came out, major shift for me personally and for our whole family. And I talk about it in some of our podcasts. I talk about it in my book. I talk about what that was, and it just completely changed my. But I am so grateful to you and everybody at the Pachamama Alliance for everything that you've done to you've changed our family, and you've changed to help change the dream of our modern world. And so if there's something, I saw your blog the other day, and you had a point on there that says, if you were an alien looking down on us now, what would those aliens be thinking? Whether they were completely mad, or it's the test is going the way it's supposed to. I don't know.
Well, think about it. If you were an alien looking down, what would you do? And my conclusion is probably I would stay up there for a while and say, these people are crazy. They're destroying themselves, and they're destroying this beautiful planet. Let's see if they can work it out. And if they don't, then maybe we're going to have to go down and do something to save this beautiful planet. I don't know. But I think, this gets back to the book I'm working on now about the Chinese economic hitman. And I spent time in China. I taught at an MBA program there a few years ago for Chinese MBA students who were identified, they're Communist Party members. They've been identified as future leaders. And they are extremely concerned about the future. Like our like our young people are, who wouldn't be. Then they feel the same way. And they say, you know, we created an economic miracle, but it came at a horrible price socially and environmentally. But they say, and I think they believed it. I hope they'll do it. They say we're gonna create a miracle now, socially and economic and environmentally. We're going to be the greenest country on the planet. That was what they. You know, I heard this paraphrased. I'm paraphrasing what I heard over and over. And so, I think the future, the hope for the future, is that we will all see that we are aliens. We are the aliens, and we've alienated ourselves because we've defined ourselves as apart from, rather than a part of nature. Yes, and if we're apart from, then we're aliens by definition. And if the Americans and the Indians and the Brazilians and the Chinese and the Russians and everybody else can recognize that we have alienated ourselves and we are in the process of destroying life as we know it. We're standing on the precipice. So let's come together as if the aliens were hovering up there prepared to attack us. I think we'd all come together. I think Chinese and Russians and Brazilians.
We would absolutely. It's not even a question.
So let's do it. Let's define ourselves. We are the aliens. Our perception of short-term maximization, which the Chinese share and the Russians share, and we all share, but we got to turn that around. That's alienated ourselves. So I think the hope is that, Devin, your generation and the ones a little above you and a lot coming along below you, just really need to see that we are aliens on our own planet. We have alienated ourselves, and we must attack those the premise, the perception behind the aliens. Because let's face it, human activity is completely controlled by perception. You know, there is no China, there's no United States, there's no corporations, there's no culture, there's no religion, except as we perceive them. And when enough people who accept a perception are codified into law, it has a huge impact on reality. And so the perception of short-term maximization, materialistic maximization, has been driving us, and it's been driving us to the precipice. And so we turn that around. We create a new perception as our driving perception, and that is long-term maximization of long-term benefits. It's exciting, you know. I wish I were your age. I mean, my only regret at this point is that, you know, I'm on my way out at some point. I don't know whether I got a year left or 20 years left. Who knows? But I know it's somewhere in that. I'm 77. It's somewhere in that. And so I'll do all I can for the time that remains to support you. But you guys, your generation has to take the reins and correct the terrible mistakes that we've made. And I also want to say in our own defense that we also created amazing medicine, amazing science, amazing technologies, amazing art, amazing literature. So we've done a lot of good things. There's no question about it. We wouldn't be having this conversation if we hadn't created some of the opportunities. But we went way, way, way too far. Taking us to the precipice.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you know, you said you're 77, so all of the technology, everything that's happened in your lifetime, in the span is absolutely mind-boggling. And now you look at somebody like Devin, who's 25, and what is going to occur in his lifetime. And there's so much potential for good, and we see it every day. I mean, the youth are so much more switched on than we were. You know, we had no idea. We had no idea. I mean, we were terrible. I mean, when we were kids, it was terrible. You know, you would, I mean, maybe throw garbage out the window of your car. I don't know.
Yes,
that would never.
We thought nature would take care of it.
Exactly. Right.
We had a belief system like that, and
So, you know, and now we have, you know, these guys, and you see the conversations with the young people, young people, young kids in kindergarten talking about nature and preservation and you know, this life economy, I guess, like that you were just saying. You know, there's been a big shift. So I have great positive hopes for mankind because of, you know, the youth. And, you know, we made a lot of mistakes, and the thing is hopefully we learn by our mistakes. We learn by our mistakes, and now the youth are understanding the mistakes that we made, and hopefully they're not going to make the same mistakes. And I don't think they will, you know. Yeah.
I must be feeling old today because I'm actually 76. even though I said I'm 77.
Yeah.
So, Devin, what are your feelings around all of this?
Yeah, it's you guys have kind of nailed it. It is scary. It is kind of terrifying, and in the grand perspective of things. And and you watch some documentaries, and it's kind of like what you were saying earlier. It's like they're polarized. One of them is telling you all you want to hear, and the other one's telling you everything you don't want to hear. And I think it is scary on how much technology is going to advance. But I do firmly believe that the youth of this era and this age is they're switched on, and we're ready. More and more people that I talk to, and more of my friends, they understand that things do have to change, and it's less of the gung ho, kill everyone, take everything mentality. It's more of we have to work with the planet. So I do have nightmares sometimes, and the nightmare sometimes is the reality. But I do firmly believe that we can change, because things will only get bad before they get better. And they are starting to get bad. But I think at the end of the day, the youth of today will when we're the elders, I think that the wisdom will be passed on, and I think everything will be turned around. I hope, and I do actually believe that, though.
I'm glad to hear that, and I hear that from a lot of people your age in a lot of different countries. And I wasn't hearing it when Confessions of an Economic Hitman came out in 2004.
Right.
So 2 decades ago, younger people, college students, were still very oriented to making money and having power. And I find that's changed, or it's in the process of changing.
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's really good to hear that too. And yeah.
And then there has been, like you said, some massive shifts too with the youth, wanting to work for a company. They want to know what their social aspect is. What are they doing? What are they giving back? What are they creating? What good are they doing? As opposed to, just the salary of what we go in and look for, a good salary and benefits, where now there's your triple bottom lines and all these things that have never been talked about before. And like you said, when Economic Hitman came out in 2004, that was a totally different era. It's not that long ago, but now there's even little movements. Remember the movement where you had the plastic straws, and they had the photograph of the straw up the turtle's nose, right, at the ocean, and I was like, we need to take out well, that happened really quick. That was like within 6 months. This whole anti-plastic straw thing came out. So things like that, with social media and the positive side of social media, so it can do a lot of good and bring as long as it's the right awareness, bring awareness and make change pretty quick. So, I mean, yeah, I've been really, really impressed what's been going on in the last 5-6 years. And it's not that it's a very tiny, small part in time, but it's been quick. There's been a lot of really cool things happening in the past 5
Yeah,
6 years.
and the last year or two, the coronavirus has given us the gift of teaching us that we can change.
Yeah.
And sometimes the change is difficult, challenging, but we actually learned that we can have fun with it, I think. I mean, I was, at the beginning of all this, the idea of being isolated and so on was, but it's given me an opportunity to explore a lot of things that I wouldn't have explored otherwise, and to expand my relationship with people who are very close to me, we've been traveling a lot. We're far apart, my partner and I and others, and so we've learned that we can change, and we can enjoy at least parts of that change.
I found during the whole COVID era here that there was a lot of stuff internally that I was discovering about myself, about other people, and a lot of learning and a lot of really cool routines that I was always too busy. I'm too busy to do that. Now into these, morning breathing and kind of yoga, and Devin and I, we do this cold plunge into the ice bath. I never would have dreamed of doing anything like that, but all this stuff is for, it's for the good. Like I've become a better person in the past 18 months than I was, 3 years ago. So it forced us to reflect. So I think we should, on all this, I think we should probably wrap her up. This has been fantastic. We could talk for hours with John.
So good.
So enlightening. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Yeah. When your new, the new version of your book comes out.
Well, it's probably not going to happen until the fall of 2023. 2023. No, wait, I got that right. 2022. 2022.
When you're 77, yeah.
That's it. Let's talk them, but also maybe before.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah,
In
no
the
thanks.
meantime, keep touching that jaguar.
Yeah,
I know.
Remember the jaguar, that comes from the Amazonian idea that if we run from our fears or anything that's holding us back, whatever's holding us back, if we run from it, it chases us.
Yes.
But if we go out and touch it, we take its power, and it empowers us and motivates us and inspires us to move forward into what we really, really want to do. So, the fears that we have, and you expressed them, it's the fear of the future, and it's a real fear. But we got to really touch it and really look at what is it we're truly fearful of, and how can we turn that around, because it's all changeable. It can all be changed. We just have to touch that jaguar and figure out, and I think it always has to do with perception. The jaguar always can, the idea of touching the jaguar, according to the shaman in the Amazon, is that the jaguar can show you a new perception. And of course, the jaguar is just whatever voices speak to you internally, whether it's a jaguar or an angel or God,
whatever it is,
whatever it is, it's the information is there.
Yeah. And Devin, that's John's new book, right?
Yes, that's what I was going to say. So wrapping it up on that final note, if you guys want to learn more about John, we will put the links in the description. Check out www.johnperkins.org. Touching the Jaguar, obviously the book, his newish book that came out in 2020, and Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Check it all out, but we will put all those links in the description for you guys. But other than that, thank you so much today. This has just been such an enlightening, amazing conversation. It's always such an honor to talk to you, man. And I know that you've changed my dad's life, you've changed my family's life, and that's for real. Like it's just amazing. So thank you so much for coming on today, and we'll have to have you back. My pleasure. And I would just say that it's the forest, it's the rainforest that's changed all of our lives. We're vehicles now. I was a vehicle that helped bring your family in, and you're a vehicle now to reach out here. But basically, the messages are all coming from
the rainforest and the jaguar.
The rainforest, yeah. Incidentally, when the book came out, a good friend of mine who's a professional, who's a great artist, usually does expressionistic stuff, painted this. And what he's got is the jaguars going from a very dark, confused area, you can't see it very well, into the light. But in order to do that, you have to go through kind of a bleeding, fiery, an earth that's bleeding and sort of consumed by firewood. But he's got to go through that, got to pass through that.
Wow, that's incredible.
To the light. Yeah.
I got to show you something. I wonder if I can unclip. I have so there's a shaman friend of mine, Jamie Alvarez from in Peru, that became very good friends with. Went into a restaurant in Cusco, and there was this incredible paintings. And I had the artist there. I asked him to paint an eagle and a condor and an indigenous child with a couple of spears, because it was my vision in the Amazon. But there was something that was missing. And I said, no, there's got to be something in the back. And then we looked at it. And I said, no, we need a jaguar to be peering out through the dark from behind them. And I have it up here. You won't be able to hear me talk anymore, but I'm gonna walk.
Unclip your microphone, and you'll be able to take the whole thing with you.
I'm gonna unclip my.
Hang on 2 seconds. We're still recording, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna show you guys this. It was, in the very back. Yeah, John, you'll appreciate this.
Yeah.
So,
oh wow.
So if you look, there's a
yes, fantastic. I see the jaguar's face looming up over the whole thing. That's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it? Yeah, it's an eagle and a condor with the indigenous child, and then in the very back, you can barely see him peering through is the jaguar.
Yeah. I would love to get a snapshot of that. If you would.
No problem. Yeah, absolutely.
Sure of it. That'd be great. I'd love to take a better look at it. That's beautiful. Wow.
Okay, well, that's great. Thanks, John. Really, really appreciate it. And
pleasure. Thank you guys for doing all that you do. Keep spreading this.
No, thanks for doing. Like you said, we're just a conduit. Now we're just a conduit, and we're
a conduit. And I think it's so great, father and son, the generational thing working together to do this too is so important. Thank you guys.
Thank
No.
you. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Till next time.
Till next time.
Hasta la próxima vez.
La próxima vez.